You grab a box of spaghetti at the grocery store. The same box you've grabbed 100 times, the same brand, the same price point. You've seen this product so many times that you don't even read the label anymore. You know what you're getting, or at least you think you do. But here's what most people in that aisle don't realize. The pasta in your hand is not the same pasta that was sold under that exact same brand name 30 years ago. The packaging looks virtually identical. The price is similar. The branding is consistent. But the actual product, the thing that cooks in your pot and goes on your plate, has undergone a profound transformation. And that transformation has nothing to do with improving the product. It has everything to do with making it cheaper, faster, and easier to produce at the scale that modern grocery chains demand. This isn't a story about food safety. The pasta in these boxes won't poison you. It's not contaminated. It's not made from bad ingredients. But it is made from a fundamentally different philosophy about what pasta should be, how it should be made, and what compromises are acceptable in pursuit of profit and distribution. Once you understand how that philosophy works, buying pasta becomes a completely different experience. You stop seeing boxes as interchangeable commodities. You start seeing them as the end result of specific manufacturing decisions. And suddenly, the choice in front of you is no longer simple. The truth is that 6 major pasta brands have come to represent the exact ways that the category has shifted toward industrialization, cost reduction, and the abandonment of what pasta actually was. But there are also 3 brands that have resisted that shift, that have maintained closer fidelity to original pasta-making principles, and that still believe that the experience of eating pasta matters more than the efficiency of producing it. Let's count down the 6 brands that represent compromise, and then we'll look at the 3 that represent resistance. Starting at number 6, Barilla. Barilla is not just a major brand. Barilla is the largest pasta manufacturer in the entire world. The company produces approximately 1,400 tons of pasta every single day across 30 production facilities, 15 in Italy and 15 spread across the rest of the globe. That scale is important to understand because scale creates a gravitational force. When you're producing pasta at that volume, your decisions cascade through the entire industry. Your manufacturing philosophy becomes the default assumption, your standards become the reference point, and your compromises become normalized. Barilla's core compromise is the choice to use soft wheat instead of durum semolina. Durum wheat, also called hard wheat, is the traditional wheat for pasta. It has a higher gluten content. It has more protein. It has a firmer structure. When you mill durum wheat into semolina, you get a coarser flour that extrudes into pasta with structural integrity. The pasta holds its shape when you cook it. It resists mushiness. It maintains a slightly al dente quality even if you're not paying attention to the clock. Soft wheat is different. It's lower in protein, it's lower in gluten, it mills into a finer flour. That finer flour is easier to work with at industrial scale. It's easier to hydrate, it's easier to extrude, it's easier to dry, and it's cheaper to source because soft wheat is grown in more regions and at lower cost than specialty durum wheat. But the trade-off is immediate and noticeable. Soft wheat pasta cooks differently. It releases more starch into the cooking water, which clouds the water and can make your sauce feel heavy. The pasta itself becomes softer faster. If you're not standing right over the pot, it transitions from al dente to mushy in what feels like seconds. The texture is less defined. The bite is less present. The flavor is more neutral and less distinctly wheaty. The pasta becomes less of a starring ingredient and more of a vehicle for sauce. This is a fundamental shift in what pasta is supposed to be. Yet because Barilla set this new standard at such a massive scale, most people under the age of 40 have never actually tasted traditional pasta. They've only tasted Barilla and brands that copied Barilla's formula. So when someone says they don't like pasta, what they usually mean is they don't like soft wheat pasta. They don't know that alternative possibilities exist. The Barilla box shows golden wheat fields and heritage and tradition. The visual branding is all about authenticity and timelessness. But the actual manufacturing choices inside that box represent a 1970s decision to optimize for logistics and cost rather than for the pasta experience itself. That decision was made because it worked. It allowed Barilla to become the dominant brand. It allowed them to ship pasta further, keep it fresher on shelves, price it competitively, and capture market share. From a purely business perspective, it was a brilliant decision. But from a pasta perspective, it was a retreat. Number 5 on the countdown is Ronzoni. Ronzoni is owned by a massive holding company that also owns dozens of other well-known food brands across multiple categories. That ownership structure matters because it means that Ronzoni's decision-making process is not primarily driven by pasta expertise or pasta philosophy. It's driven by the same financial logic that drives every other product in that corporate portfolio. Maximize volume, minimize cost, optimize for shelf stability. Treat the product as a commodity where differentiation is dangerous because it complicates manufacturing and marketing. Ronzoni uses similar soft wheat pasta as Barilla does, so the structural problems are identical. But Ronzoni has taken an additional step that makes the issue more complex. Ronzoni adds enrichment. On the ingredient label, you'll see the word enriched. What that means, according to FDA standards, is that certain B vitamins and iron have been added to the product. Thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid, and iron are the standard enrichments. This is actually a federal requirement in the United States. The FDA has established that refined pasta must be enriched with these nutrients because the refining process removes them. So technically, Ronzoni is following the law. But here's the invisible problem that the label doesn't explain. When wheat is milled, the bran and germ are removed. Those parts of the grain contain most of the natural B vitamins and minerals. When you remove them, you lose those nutrients. The Ronzoni response is to add synthetic versions back. But synthetic B vitamins are not processed by your body in exactly the same way as natural B vitamins from whole grain. They're absorbed differently. They lack the cofactors and companion nutrients that exist in the original grain. The enrichment label makes it sound like the nutrition has been preserved or even improved. In reality, it's been stripped and then partially reconstructed using a pale imitation of what was lost. What Ronzoni represents is a full philosophical shift in how American pasta manufacturing treats wheat. Instead of respecting the grain and preserving its natural value, manufacturers strip away what doesn't fit their process and then add back the minimum required by law. It's a cost-plus model where the cost is kept low and the legal requirement is met, but the actual nutritional integrity of the product is compromised. The front of the box says enriched as if it's a feature. An enriched product is one that has been improved through the addition of nutrients. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that a diminished product has been partially restored to legal minimums. It's enrichment framed as enhancement when it's actually just remediation. Number 4 in our countdown represents a specific inflection point where the pasta industry decided that the texture of pasta didn't actually need to be firm. It came from Kraft mac and cheese. Kraft makes a specific pasta product designed exclusively for their boxed mac and cheese system. It's not sold as a standalone spaghetti, but what Kraft engineered matters because their strategy influenced how the entire category thinks about what pasta should be. Kraft's pasta is designed to be soft. It's designed to fracture and break apart. It's designed to absorb liquid and lose its structural definition. It's engineered to accept cheese sauce into its cracks and crevices rather than resisting it. The whole point is that the pasta should be almost subservient to the cheese sauce. It should disappear into the dish rather than maintaining its own identity. This was a brilliant design for a specific product in a specific context. But here's what happened. Kraft's philosophy about pasta texture became embedded in the broader industry's assumptions. Other manufacturers started asking why pasta should hold its shape at all. Why should it demand proper cooking technique? Why should it require attention? Why not just make it soft and accommodating from the manufacturing stage onward? This mentality has spread far beyond Kraft's specific product. It influences how supermarket brands make their pasta. It influences how mid-tier brands think about texture targets. It affects what consumers have learned to accept as normal. When you cook pasta today, you're often cooking pasta that was engineered, at the design stage, to be soft and forgiving. Traditional pasta was the opposite. It demanded respect. It required proper cooking time and attention. It held its shape with intention. That was a feature, not a limitation. Number 3 on our countdown represents the complete commodification of pasta. Store-brand, private label pasta. Most major grocery chains now sell their own house brand of spaghetti. It's cheaper than name brands. The packaging mimics the visual language of major brands. The nutrition label looks similar. The ingredient list looks similar. But private label pasta is manufactured by contract producers, and contract manufacturing is driven by a single incentive: cost reduction. These manufacturers are paid less per unit than they would receive for branded products, so their margin depends entirely on cutting costs at every step. The wheat quality is lower. The drying process is accelerated beyond what traditional pasta requires, which makes the pasta more brittle and more prone to breakage during shipping and handling. The shapes are less consistent in thickness and uniformity. The manufacturing standards are looser. Quality control happens less frequently. And here's a detail that most people never discover. Private label pasta often changes manufacturers. The same store might source their spaghetti from 3 different factories in a single year. Sometimes the same factory, sometimes not. This means consistency is essentially non-existent. You buy the same box twice, and you're potentially getting slightly different product. The label doesn't tell you that. The price doesn't account for it. Your reasonable expectation that you're getting the same product twice is fundamentally broken. Private label pasta represents the complete decoupling of consistency from commodity pricing. It's the logical endpoint of treating pasta as a pure commodity with no inherent differentiation. And because people buy private labels specifically because of price, they're often less likely to notice quality variance. They just think, well, pasta is pasta. It all cooks up the same. They don't realize they're buying from a system that's optimized entirely for reducing cost, with zero commitment to consistency or quality maintenance. Number 2 represents perhaps the most insidious category shift because it preys on health consciousness: Barilla whole grain. Barilla responded to the health food movement and the rise of whole grain awareness by creating a whole grain pasta option. The marketing is entirely about health. The box emphasizes fiber content. The messaging highlights nutritional superiority. The nutritional claims look compelling. Someone trying to make a healthier choice sees that box and thinks they've found the solution. This is the upgraded version. This is what they should be feeding their family. But here's what happens when you actually cook Barilla whole grain pasta. Whole grain pasta is inherently more difficult to manufacture at scale. Whole grain flour is denser. It's more absorbent. It needs more water. It's harder to extrude into long strands without breaking. It's harder to dry evenly. To make whole grain pasta manageable at Barilla's production scale, they added extra moisture and binders. This makes the dried pasta feel slightly slippery, almost oily when you touch it in the box. When you cook it, it breaks more easily. The texture becomes mushy rather than firm. The pasta fragments. It doesn't hold together. It doesn't feel like real pasta. It feels like an approximation. So Barilla created a product that tries to be healthy but delivers a significantly worse pasta experience than their refined white pasta. Most people trying to make a healthier choice end up with a product that tastes worse, feels worse in the mouth, and cooks worse. So they abandon the health goal and go back to regular Barilla. This is a form of market manipulation. It's not illegal. It's not deceptive in any literal sense. But it's a deliberate strategy to make the healthy option worse so that people give up on health and return to the refined white version. Barilla wins either way because they're selling both products. The customer loses because they never actually get to experience what good whole grain pasta should taste like. And at number 1 is Dilalo Organic Pasta, which represents the final and most sophisticated version of category compromise, the premium illusion. Dilalo is marketed as a premium organic option. The packaging is elegant and minimalist. It emphasizes organic certification from USDA and other recognized bodies. The price is significantly higher than conventional pasta, often double or triple. And the pasta itself is made from organic durum wheat, which is genuinely higher quality than the wheat in mass-market brands. Organic wheat is grown without synthetic pesticides. It's subject to stricter regulations. It's more carefully managed, so from a raw materials perspective, Dilalo starts with a superior input. But here's the critical detail that most buyers miss, and it's the most important detail in this entire discussion. Organic certification addresses the sourcing of the wheat. It does not address how the wheat is processed. It does not address the manufacturing method. It does not address the drying temperature or the drying duration or the extrusion method. Dilalo's organic pasta is still dried at relatively high temperatures, which damages the gluten structure. It's still milled in ways that compromise the grain's integrity, even though the grain itself is organic and high quality. The organic label creates the perception of a complete upgrade to a fundamentally better product. In reality, the buyer has upgraded only one variable, the sourcing of the wheat. Everything downstream, the entire manufacturing chain, is largely identical to non-organic versions. This is the most insidious form of category shift because it makes people feel like they've made a sophisticated, healthy, premium choice when they've actually only changed one input while all the structural compromises remain intact. You're paying premium price for the perception of quality while the actual production philosophy is unchanged. The organic label sells a story about care and intention. The manufacturing reality tells a different story. So we've now counted down 6 major spaghetti brands, and each one represents a specific way that the category has shifted away from what most people actually expect when they buy pasta. But now we need to ask the foundational question: what actually changed, and why did it happen? The shift happened because of 3 interconnected forces. The first was distribution demand. As grocery chains consolidated and became national operations, they needed products that could be shipped across the country and survive temperature fluctuations, humidity changes, and extended shelf time. Delicate, traditionally dried pasta is fragile. High-quality durum semolina pasta requires specific storage conditions. It can become brittle in low-humidity environments. It can absorb moisture in high-humidity environments. Once you ship it across the country multiple times, the product quality degrades. Manufacturers responded by engineering pasta that could survive rough treatment. This meant using softer wheat that wouldn't shatter. It meant faster drying that locked in moisture. It meant industrial process that prioritized durability over quality. The second force was cost reduction. Durum wheat is expensive. It's a specialty crop. It's grown in specific regions. It requires specific growing conditions. Soft wheat is cheaper. It's grown everywhere. It's easier to source. As pasta became a commodity product and customers started buying purely on price, manufacturers had to reduce costs to compete. Using cheap soft wheat instead of expensive durum semolina meant instant cost savings that went straight to the bottom line. Competition on price drove the entire market downward. The third force was consumer complacency. Most people don't know the difference between durum and soft wheat pasta. Most people don't taste the difference anymore because they've never tasted the original version, so there's no natural pressure from consumers to maintain quality. The companies made the change. The consumers didn't notice. The market didn't correct. So the change stuck. It became the new normal. It became the standard that every other brand had to match just to compete. But there are 3 spaghetti brands that have resisted this logic. They haven't gotten pulled into the gravitational force of industrialization. They've maintained manufacturing philosophies that prioritize the pasta experience over cost efficiency. They're not perfect, they're not magical, but they've held on to something closer to what pasta used to be and arguably what it should still be. The first is Rusticella d'Abruzzo. Rusticella is an Italian brand that has been making pasta since 1924. That's 100 years of continuous production using the same basic methods. The company uses durum wheat semolina, which is the traditional pasta wheat. They source from Italian growers. They mill the wheat carefully. They extrude the pasta using bronze dies, not industrial Teflon dies. Bronze dies are older technology. They wear out faster, they're more expensive to maintain, but they create a rougher texture on the pasta surface. That rough texture is crucial because it allows sauce to grip and stick to the pasta. Industrial Teflon dies create a smooth surface that sauce slides off of. Rusticella dries their pasta slowly, at low temperatures, which preserves the gluten structure and maintains the protein integrity. This takes longer. It uses more energy. It ties up factory capacity. But it results in pasta that has actual texture, actual bite, actual character. When you cook Rusticella, it holds its shape. It doesn't get mushy. It has a slightly rough mouthfeel that distinguishes it from industrial pasta. It tastes distinctly of wheat. Is it more expensive than Barilla? Yes, significantly. But the price reflects a different production philosophy, not a luxury markup or artificial scarcity. The brand hasn't tried to become industrial. They've stayed small. They've maintained their process. They've prioritized quality over volume. The label is straightforward. There's no marketing manipulation. What you see is what you get. The second alternative is Banza, which represents a completely different approach to the pasta category. Innovation rather than compromise. Banza is a newer brand, founded in the last decade, that doesn't use wheat at all. Instead, they make pasta from chickpea flour. This is a legume-based pasta that fundamentally changes the nutritional profile. Chickpea pasta has more protein than wheat pasta. It has more fiber, it has a lower glycemic index, it has a completely different amino acid profile. This isn't a compromise or a middle ground. This is a deliberate choice to use a different base ingredient that delivers different nutritional characteristics. The texture is notably different from wheat pasta, but it's notably better in specific ways. Chickpea pasta holds together during cooking. It doesn't fragment. It has more substantial mouthfeel. It absorbs sauce differently because the flour structure is different. The protein content is genuinely higher, not enriched or supplemented. It's legitimately there. Banza represents a category innovation rather than a category compromise. If you're looking for a different nutritional profile, if you have specific dietary goals, if you want more protein and fiber, Banza delivers actual results. It doesn't pretend to be wheat pasta. It doesn't try to mimic the experience of traditional pasta. It's a different product designed for different purposes. The third alternative is Martelli, another Italian producer. But what matters about Martelli specifically is their commitment to traditional production methods. Martelli uses bronze-cut dies for extrusion. They slow-dry their pasta, which means the drying process takes approximately 14 hours instead of the 4 to 6 hours that industrial manufacturers use. They use durum wheat from Italy. They control their entire supply chain. The result is pasta that tastes and feels distinctly different from mass-market options. The box is simple. The claims are minimal. The marketing budget is tiny. But the product inside reflects the original intention of what spaghetti should be. It's a direct line from the wheat field to the pot on your stove, with minimal industrial intervention. Now, here's what you should actually do with this information. You don't need to switch to Italian pasta for every meal. You don't need to spend double on every box of pasta you buy. That's not practical for most people. But you should understand that when you pick up a box of spaghetti, you're making a choice about what kind of manufacturing philosophy you're supporting. You're choosing between two different visions of what pasta should be. Are you buying pasta that was engineered for efficiency, logistics, and cost, or pasta that was engineered for actual pasta experience? Those aren't morally charged questions. They're practical questions. And they matter because they affect what you're actually eating. So next time you're in the pasta aisle, spend an extra 30 seconds doing a label check. Look at the ingredient list. If the first ingredient is durum semolina or durum wheat, that's a good sign. If it's soft wheat or just wheat flour, that's a warning sign. Look for enrichment claims and recognize them for what they are, an admission that the base product has been compromised. Look at the brand's origin and history if you can discover it. Not because you're trying to be a snob or because you're trying to make some kind of moral statement about pasta, but because you're trying to make an actual choice rather than defaulting to whatever feels familiar. The pasta industry has built an entire system around making all boxes look the same. The packaging is similar, the prices are similar, the shelf placement is similar, the branding uses similar visual language. Everything is engineered to make you feel like it doesn't matter which box you choose. But they're not the same. They represent fundamentally different manufacturing philosophies. They deliver different eating experiences. They support different visions of what food production should be. The 6 brands we counted down, Barilla, Ronzoni, Kraft, Private Label, Barilla Whole Grain, and Delalo, they've all made deliberate choices to optimize for cost and efficiency. Those choices are legal, they're not deceptive in any strict sense. They're just choices that prioritize different values than what pasta making has historically prioritized. The 3 alternatives we've looked at, Rusticella d'Abruzzo, Banza, and Martelli, they've made different choices. They've prioritized experience, integrity, and maintaining connection to what pasta actually is. Those choices cost more. They require more attention. They're not always available everywhere, but they exist. And knowing that they exist changes the conversation. The next time you're standing in that pasta aisle, you now understand what's actually being offered to you. You understand the history of how those products got here. You understand what compromises are embedded in each option. And you understand that you actually do have choices, even if most of them aren't as visible or as aggressively marketed as Barilla. Your pasta choice matters, not because it's going to save your life or change your health trajectory, but because it reflects whether you're making a conscious choice or just accepting whatever the largest, most efficient manufacturer decided to sell you. And that distinction between acceptance and choice is really what this entire pasta aisle story is about. The boxes are waiting. But now you know what's actually inside them.